Welcome to Fusion Fantasy Football. Welcome to the very first live stream YouTube video podcast, all in one. Therefore, no editing. This is just me getting out a podcast this week, basically. No, there's a few things I want to talk about, and it didn't look like a guest was going to work, and I'm going on vacation for a few days starting tomorrow, so I just figured I would put out a few thoughts that I had, and I had a few in particular this week. Oh my. If I haven't mentioned it, you should probably follow me on Twitter at FusionFFB. I am, of course, your host, Joshua. If this is your first exposure to Fusion Fantasy Football, I'm sorry. But basically, I just talk about Fusion Fantasy Football stuff, which is fantasy football, and I'm pulling it together. I'm fusing all kinds of different sources, information, listen to all the experts, read all the stuff, and we try to integrate it into a cohesive, sensical, reasonable conclusions, and try not to get overcome by hype and things like that. So it's a great place, if you haven't heard me before, to listen in and quickly get a wide range of information, maybe things you haven't been hearing, that kind of thing. That's my goal. So welcome. If this is your first time, then you've truly picked a weird episode or video to stumble into for the first time. So be sure to check out some other things, because today is not going to be atypical at all. Basically, a few things happened. So yesterday, I get news, pops up on my phone. Ding, Melvin Gordon may be holding out. Yeah, I know. Well, I didn't know he was going to hold out, but I was, halfway through? I mean, probably a third in sections, but probably a good half in actual word count for a brand new article about Melvin Gordon and why the title of, and here, I'm going to pull it up for you, YouTube and streamers. You'll be able to read it. I'm not going to have anything in the video that I'm not going to read or talk about, so for the sake of the listeners, I'm never going to pass on the podcast in lieu of doing video work. Instead, the video will always be in addition, but that's where most people listening, I'm sure, will continue to. I'll let you see it over here. I'll let you see it here. Look at this. All this right here, this is me writing about the contract. I had almost the entire section for the contract information done on Melvin Gordon. You can see I have a whole outline about what I was going to talk about: his injury, his age, comps, all that stuff. And my conclusion was going to be, and it's right there in the title, which is rather out early than late, Melvin Gordon. Get out on Melvin Gordon this season. And I wasn't going to say get out on him now. I was going to say get out of him this season. And there's going to be some stipulations in there. Like, if you're contending and you're making a playoff run, then just get the most out of him and try to win. Keep him, of course. But if you're not going to make the playoffs, you'd better be selling him to a contender this season, because he is at his peak in every way. In fantasy value, he's at his peak. In his production, he's at his peak. At his age, for a running back, he is at his peak. This is it. It doesn't get better. I mean, this season might be his best. It might be good, or could have been if he doesn't hold out. We'll get to that. But this is it. The roller coaster is all downhill from here on a running back. And if you've been listening to me, you've heard me talk about it before. So this isn't new. This article was just I just wanted to put an article. I haven't written an article in a little while. So I wanted to get something out there on the website, written by me. Burl Joffley made me feel bad that, the first article out on my site in months, if not a year, is by him on my own website. So I couldn't let him one up me, right? So I pulled that up. And I wanted to get it out there, but I've talked about Melvin Gordon before. I talked about his age, everything I've talked about. I'm repeating myself. This is how upset I am. So, if you check my appearance out on Open Bar about 2 months ago or something like that, I tried to tell you guys right there. Boom, there it is. Said the guy I see being in a Melvin Gordon is the guy I see being in a Todd Gurley-like situation a year from now, where we have injury concern, we have is he worth the money concern, and is he worth it at his age and his usage, how much workload he's had, the proverbial tread on the tires, which I hate. But that's the point. And all those things point to him being below where he is now in value next offseason. Next offseason. It's always about next offseason for me. It's not about 2 or 3 year windows. Screw the window. It's about from now until, if you're in Dynasty, until your next rookie draft. And if you're just doing redrafts or seasonal kind of things, like seasonal best balls, it's between now and the NFL draft. That's your window. After the NFL draft, things start becoming more apparent, and you can get away with some stuff with veterans into the summer, but usually your window for selling a veteran is gone. You should not be selling veterans right now, basically. Don't do it. You might as well just hold on to them at now and let them actually show something at the beginning of the season and then get rid of them, okay? But don't sell, in most cases, as a rule, do not be selling veterans right now. But you have no idea how frustrated I was. Melvin, you couldn't have waited like 4 days. I told you I'm on vacation. I was going to finish this thing up in the evenings for the next few nights, and I was going to try to have it out by Wednesday. You know, training camps are coming. I didn't think he'd be dropping this before rookies even report, let alone him. He dropped it early. So let's get in actually analyzing it. Sorry. Enough of my rant on Melvin Gordon. Let's get into analyzing what the situation is, players around him, things like that. So Melvin Gordon, he says, trade me or pay me. That's what he's saying. Now, he never says in there specifically, or I will hold out, which was pointed out by our friend Crocker. But the implication is obvious, because without that implication, the demand that he has to be paid or traded means nothing. They'll just laugh at him. If he doesn't hold out, if that's not a real threat, they're just going to laugh at him. They'll be like, it's like Crocker said, they'll give him a pat on the back and say, oh, it's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. We'll take care of you. And he'll play the season. And then they'll try to franchise the tag him next year, and that's when he holds out. And that was what my prediction was. You can see right here, why do I still have on the stream? You're watching the Audacity stream. Guys, never done this before. All 3-in-1 stream, YouTube video for the future, actually staying on the YouTube channel, and of course the audio. So you can see all the nice, you get to see it. That's nice. That's pretty. Okay, we're gonna go over back to my what is going on. Back to my article. You can see up here I had all the different things going on, but my point right here. This was the point. Boom, and it was the Bell effect. You can see it. The Bell effect. So I'm going to read what I wrote. We've recently, actually I have to go back because it doesn't make sense. Franchise cost. So first I evaluated how much he's going to cost, which is a lot. It's like 13 at minimum $1 million a year, and probably it's going to have to be at least a 4-year, and at best with a 2-year out. That would be Le'Veon Bell's contract, and he's older. So I basically took Bell's contract and Gurley's contract and looked at them and say, with the increasing caps and so on, he's probably not getting it that much less than Gurley, even if you feel that Gurley's contract was huge and he deserves more because he's better. Things grow. This is the way it works. Who has the biggest contract for quarterbacks right now? What, Matthew Stafford, or did Wentz take him over? Either way, Wentz is the most recent one. So that's how immediately I was like, oh, did it take it over? Yeah, because he was the most recent one, so of course he took it over. This is the way it works with the contracts. And as the caps go up and, we'll see how that goes with CBAs and so on, but they've got more money coming in, basically. So Here we go. Gurley contract, 4-year, 57 with it's actually a couple more options on there even. And then Bell's contract, 4-year, 52 with an out after 2 years. I said Gurley's contract is 4 years. 50, there's options beyond that, but there really isn't a good out until those 4 years. I think there's a fifth, if not even sixth option, 6th-year option, but I only called it a 4-year. Anyway, based on that, that's like between 4.5 to 4.75% of their cap. So when you do all the math, that basically tells you Melvin Gordon is going to be getting at least 12, if not 13 or $14 million contract for 4 years, with at best a 2-year out, probably a 3 or 4 year. Now you look at that, and then you look at that's what I didn't get to. That's why I had to finish. You get into where the Chargers are as a team contract wise, and you say, okay, they've got to figure out what's going on in the Rivers first. Keenan Allen comes up next year. Austin Eckler is restricted free agent next year. Hunter Henry is an unrestricted free agent next year. So they definitely want to see what he is this season, and maybe they give him a contract if he shows up and he's good. Maybe they even, look, you don't see it a lot, but I just thought of it. If he's good, they could easily franchise tag him as a tight end, which, remember that whole Jimmy Graham thing, and he wanted to be called a wide receiver, so when they franchise tagged him, he'd get way more money. But that would be a brilliant move by the Chargers to franchise tag the tight end rather than the running back. They have a lot of players that they are paying a lot of money to right now. If they did try and pay Melvin Gordon, they're probably going to have to cut someone like Melvin Ingram. So we were joking around, there be only one Melvin on the Chargers going forward, because there's a lot of money there. So I'm not going to get into too deep in the weeds on all of that. I'm just going to say I don't think they're going to pay him. And this was pointed out. I can't remember who. If I remember who before the end of the podcast, I'll say. No, I can't remember who. Was talking about how it's not really the Chargers' MO to pay running backs. They're usually pretty good at getting out of them. They let even LaDainian Tomlinson leave and go. He went to the Jets, right? They're not afraid to say, thanks, we got a lot out of you now. Bye. Okay. And that's smart of them, really. It honestly is. They've been very good about that in the past. Who else? Sproles, they let him get out of the town. So it wouldn't make sense from that perspective for the owners, front office kind of people to suddenly decide to pay Gurley this kind of contract. And then, of course, we see what happened with Gurley. That adds fear and doubt and hesitation that makes it less likely. And my final point that I was trying to get to is Bell. All right, so that's where I was, and I gave the background. Now here we are. The obvious alternative, I'm reading my own unpublished article now. It's so frustrating. Obvious alternative would be to use the franchise tag on Gordon. The 2019 tag is costing teams $11.2 million a year for a running back. Comparatively, the savings aren't that much per year versus signing him. However, a franchise tag basically only tells Gordon that they do not plan on keeping him for more than 1 or 2 more seasons. I'm paraphrasing myself here and there. So that really that's what it tells you. If you tag Gordon, it tells him that they're not going to be committing to him. I also just recently saw a video where I don't know where this was before, but it came out today on Twitter, where it was one of these it wasn't a studio, it was just Melvin Gordon in his home. I don't know, they were doing a documentary or something like that. And his dad was there, they were watching stuff, and his dad asked him about, you see what happened with Le'Veon Bell? And Gordon's like, yeah, I'd hold out too. Gives him 5-6 of his best years, and then they don't want to pay him. So right there is a little bit of a view into Melvin Gordon. I think Melvin Gordon, my prediction for this season is Melvin Gordon, if he is not paid and if he is not traded, he will be back to accrue his season. He will be back, which means if he goes into the season, if you're drafting later and it's clear that he's holding out, I would not be opposed to drafting Melvin Gordon. I'd have to look into more, but I would not be opposed to drafting him just not nearly as high as the first round. Obviously, I'm guessing the highest I would be willing to do it would be the third, probably more like the fourth, and even that's pushing it. Okay, because when he comes back, he could be a real impact. However, when he comes back, maybe they decide whatever they were doing before was working for them, and maybe they tell him just go home. I don't know. We just don't want the Bell situation again. However, Melvin Gordon, more so than Bell, I believe, because Bell is a younger player and does have more future earning on kind of at stake here. He will definitely want to accrue a season. And I believe it's somewhere around the week 8 after the trade deadline, somewhere around there. I can double check, but that's where the line is between accruing a season or not. It might be as late as week 10. I'd have to double check. So you're not getting anything more. If anything, you're getting less than half a season out of Melvin Gordon if he is not paid or traded. If he's paid, it's, oh, great. Draft him. That means they're actually committing to him. And that means everything that I was going to write here is obsolete. Okay. So I'm probably going to rewrite this article and take it a different way now with the new Melvin Gordon news. As soon as I publish it, I'm sure more news will come out making it completely obsolete, because that's, of course, what's going to happen. So I'll try and get it published as soon as I can so we get that news. And the point being, then everything about fear for the future is out, and you've got a good running back for a couple more years, basically. So it's just going to be the health concerns, and then how soon can they get out from under him on the contract, and that's all you're going to care about. And write him. He's a top 8 running back for however many seasons that is, according to contract, and an injury, of course. So if they trade him now, is he going to be as good where he goes? What's their offense like? Are they going to use him the same way? So on and so forth. That's going to be, who knows? They can't predict that. There's been lots of speculation about where he could be traded to. I was kicking around some ideas in my head just the other night, just trying to think, what they could do. Obvious teams would be Houston Texans, Tampa Bay. The Buffalo Bills came up as an interesting one. Someone said Dolphins, but I don't see how that makes sense. That doesn't make sense. But you could see, what if what do the Bills have that they could trade, like McCoy plus something, picks or defensive players or something like that, to the Chargers to get Gordon, and then they pay Gordon, because Gordon could be, I mean, they want a running back in Buffalo, clearly, and he's not old. So he's 26 years old. Like I said, it's downhill from here, but he's way further up the hill than McCoy is. So maybe the Chargers just say, well, we can get 1 year of effective use out of McCoy, not as the guy, not the same level of volume as Gordon was getting, but mix in Eckler. They got Justin Jackson. They just get another option. So the majority of that value in that trade has to come from whatever else they're getting. It's not McCoy, but at least they would get McCoy out of Buffalo. For Buffalo, that's where they would be. That's what's in it for them. Not only do they get Gordon, but they get McCoy off the books and out of town, which I think they would definitely be willing to do. The only reason they haven't is they don't have anything certain to replace him with. Now, the other team I thought of is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Again, it would be the same idea. They would have to give up something substantial to get him. Then I saw rumors or ideas being thrown about Jadeveon Clowney for Houston. Maybe Houston would send along Lamar Miller. I thought of that. I said Lamar Miller plus, if they sent Jadeveon Clowney and Lamar Miller to San Diego, I bet San Diego would do that. And Lamar Miller is kind of a very capable all-around back. You mix him in with the other guys who are also all-around backs, and you just have a mess of a running back by committee now in LA. But all of a sudden, Melvin Gordon is just as good as ever, probably in Houston. I say probably. He may not be just as good as ever, but he's still running back 1 then. Still a good, decent offense. Still definitely the guy. All right. I'm not sure how much more I can say about Melvin Gordon, so I'm not going to, because everything from here is speculation. We'll see. I'm going to, like I said, probably turn this article into something more, examining everything that I've just said, plus things, getting into real details. And right now, application, what are we doing? Are we going to trade for him, or are we trading him away? Don't trade him away. You have to hold him and wait and see what happens, okay? In Dynasty. I guess if you can get something out of him in a redraft league that you'd either already drafted or something like that, and somebody wants to take that risk and you don't want the risk, like I said, if he stays in LA, I do not think he plays a full season. He definitely doesn't play week 1. And they have, I'd have to check until at what point do they have to get a deal done. So I'm not prepared. I should have thought of that. I did not think of that until just now, as far as I know that came up with Bell, so that's the only reason. But this is the Bell effect. Everyone's going to be afraid. I didn't finish reading. We've recently witnessed how players react to being told by front offices they aren't going to commit to them beyond next year. Le'Veon Bell's franchise tag holdout in 2018 will continue to have repercussions around the league for years. From the team's perspective, it means Gordon is a risk to hold out if tagged, and so now they're going to be less likely and open to doing that because they're going to have the fear. And then from Gordon's perspective, it might be in his best interest to actually hold out. So now that someone's actually done it, there's a real threat, basically, and there's a lot more uncertainty there. So if he's tagged, he might just hold out. Again, that's next season, though. He's currently on for 1 year, $5.6 million, which is not a lot. I think it's actually like something like the 10th or 11th highest. I do have that here somewhere. It's the 11th single season salary for running backs this year. But it climbs a lot, obviously, to the top, guys like Bill and Gurley. All right. Melvin Gordon, why couldn't you have waited? But that's fine. That's fine. All right. Next thing I want to talk about, also in the news, Darius Guice gets a hamstring. What? And you tweet mockingly, let me see. Oh. Isn't it obvious? You're supposed to know ahead of time that somebody's going to get injured. Clown face. Yeah, you are supposed to know this. You're supposed to know that a running back returning from an ACL has a higher risk of other injuries, particularly hamstring. You're supposed to know this. This is not a surprise. This is not hindsight analysis. It's literally known, and it's not hindsight analysis because I can just tell you to go back and listen to the last podcast where we told you Darius Guice is a concern. I'm going to read something. This is an excerpt from an article about ACLs, and it's actually about hamstrings, and then it talks about ACLs and about other injuries and in how it connects to hamstrings. Koulouris et al. 2007 found that following ACL reconstruction surgery, the risk of a hamstring injury was significantly elevated. This is because the hamstrings play a role in stabilizing the knee alongside the ACL, and if the ACL cannot perform this function, the hamstrings are placed under additional strain and load. Medicine. Hashtag science fact, whatever. We know it. It's not a surprise. When are we going to learn? Go back and listen to that episode because we talked about some other people. Cooper Kupp, Will Fuller in particular. All right? Hamstring is a very real threat out there for those guys. Okay? Very real threat. This is not hindsight analysis. This is when it happens, Don't be saying, oh, well, injury happens to everybody. We can't know that it's going to happen to these guys. But it's a very much increased risk. Okay? We're just playing the probabilities in this game. That's what we do. And there's a higher chance, higher probability, higher rate of hamstring and other injuries when recovering from ACLs. We know this. It's not a surprise. Oh my goodness. Ooh. On that note, very nice video of Emmanuel Sanders on Twitter this week, moving his legs very quickly. Too bad that has nothing to do with an Achilles. I mean, obviously, it's connected still. It's functioning. He has some little kind of step cuts. But there's no power and burst out of it. He goes like 5 yards in 3 seconds and then takes off running in a straight line. And you can't really judge how quickly it takes him to take off and accelerate. There's nothing there. There's nothing there. Good. I'm glad you're healing. I'm glad he's healing. I'm glad he can move his legs very quickly. But that's his legs. That's not his Achilles. And it has nothing to do with the burst and power of taking off from a start or taking off from out of a cut, a stop and start. That's where it matters. He'd almost be better off if he was not doing well, because then maybe he could be put on the PUP list, players unable to perform, and he'd be able to actually get healthy all the way. And the all the way healthy is a lot different than the able to run around healthy. You still need that last little bit to get you to actually the full 100%. So he went 0 to, 80. I'm not a doctor or whatever, but 0 to 80% on schedule, maybe ahead of schedule. Great, good for him. It still takes time to get the last bit to 100% where he can actually be and produce and perform like Emmanuel Sanders is used to performing and how we are used to him performing. He's still not going to be himself. If he comes out week 1 trying to play, he's not going to be as effective as he's used to. Period. I'm sorry. He's not. Stop it. Just stop it. Next rant. I also keep hearing, I was just listening to, and I think it happened in about 2 or 3 different podcasts I heard, just happened to listen to yesterday. So I'm not going to name anybody because I can't remember which one said specifically what. But what keeps happening is I keep hearing people talk about, especially happens when they talk about Devonta Freeman. And everyone talks about how Devonta Freeman is a bit of a sleeper. And, as long as he stays healthy, he is a possible low-end wide receiver 1, high-end running back 2. And I agree. I also have talked about, if you go back to when I was doing projections on that team, although I did come out with Freeman a little lower, but that's because I projected some games missed in there, which we can talk about. But the point being, there's a lot of potential points for a running back on this team. And I don't think they want Ito Smith in that role. He's not going to be new Tevin Coleman. They saw him last year. They saw what he can do, and they saw what he can't do. And he's a good receiving back, but that's all he is. And I like him, and that's all I ever expected him to be, except maybe he could fill in and get extra volume if someone got injured. But I never expected him to be particularly great at it. He's not going to be Philip Lindsay, right? He's a good receiving back. But how do I keep hearing podcasts and people talk about Freeman, how good he can be, and then express concern about his injury risk and his age and his history, and then they talk about Ito Smith, and for the most part, everyone agrees that he's not up to par to fill in as the 1B like a Tevin Coleman was, where it was Freeman and Coleman. He's not up to that. So it's got to be more Freeman. But here's the problem. More Freeman is exactly the thing we're worried about that's going to get him injured. So they need to back it off. So if it's not Freeman, and if you don't think Ito Smith can do that, that obviously leaves a whole, right? And that's where I get so frustrated because everyone keeps saying that and saying, oh, he's great. There's a lot of points in this offense. Oh, but he could get hurt. Oh, but Ito Smith can do it. And then the very next phrase, they're dismissing Quadri, Allison, or even Brian Hill. They're just dismissing them. Oh, but yeah, those guys can't do it either. Well, who's going to do it? Somebody's got to do it. I don't even care if they're good. Somebody's got to do it. Because you just said, what happens if Freeman gets injured and Smith can't do it? So either they're going to have Smith do it, even though he's bad, or, and if Freeman's out, it's not going to be just Smith also, by the way. It's not going to be just Smith. Remember, even when Freeman out, it was Tevin Coleman and some Smith. So even if Smith does fall into taking over like Coleman did, there's still going to be a and somebody, right? Stop dismissing the third running back in Atlanta. It's a blatant and obvious value. Like, when somebody there gets injured, that's who you go get first. Pay up the money. I don't care. Because Quadri Allison, or maybe it's going to be Brian Hill, but I think they've seen, they know what he is. I keep being told that he somehow is a better receiving back than Olsen, but I don't know. I looked at the stats and it's not that much different. I'm not saying Olsen was a great receiver either, but he has a lot of. They say he has a lot of good movement. He's surprisingly elusive and he's fast. He's very fast for his size. He's a big, fast running back. So Quadri Allison is kind of one of those sleepers I've been talking about as a rookie. I predicted that the Falcons would need another running back, that he would be a grinder, and now I'm saying that's awesome. So there it is, my cards on the table. That's it. Now, one thing I did talk about, and I was just saying that about the games missed, my projections, it's going to be a lot of fun. I can't wait. I'm a little behind on them, but I think I'm going to catch up. I'm not going to be able to live stream them all. I've done a lot of the fun ones. But I'm going to have to do some on my own that I'm not going to be able to do live streaming while I do it. I'm going to be just wherever with my laptop. So I am predicting and projecting games missed for some of these players. I try to be a little systematic about it. Tight ends, I'll easily give them 15. But they have to have real injury history to get more. Like Devonta Freeman. They have to have injury history of nagging injuries and things that are going to make him miss. So I have him down to like 13 games. You have to have Leonard Fournette history of injuries for me to drop him down to 12. He may easily only play 8, but at least I'm less than 16. All right. And then I try to focus on getting the per healthy game rates correct. And then we just multiply that up by the games I have. Now, my finished product, when I get all these projections done, is going to be, it'll be out in I'm going to sell it in 2 forms. I mean, one is going to be free, first of all, so 3 forms. One is going to be the free version, where you can just look up the individual snapshots, okay? But 2 is going to be free version that has all of them in a PDF, and it has all the rankings out for the top, whatever relevant players, and it's going to have everything broken up by position and then a combined, and then it's going to have league-wide stats and trends that I've noticed from my projections and how it fits into history. Is passing going up as a whole this season. I'm going to analyze all those things and make sure everything, again, is reasonable expectation. That's the point. And I'm going to sell that as a PDF. You got to buy it. Sorry. Then I'm actually also going to try and sell the Excel sheet, and you'll be able to even import your own scoring. Now, I don't have first downs and I don't have bonuses. I don't have those built into how I could actually predict or calculate those, right? But I guess I could figure out bonuses if I divided the games, the yardage or whatever by the games, and then figured out how many on average of those would be. I could if I really wanted to. I'm not, okay? It's just basic. I do have it for positional, though, so all you and your fancy leagues, your tight end premiums, right? I'm in those 2 leagues. I like those leagues too. You'll be able to have your own special scoring in there, and it will use my projected stats. So you won't be able to edit the stats, but you'll be able to edit the scoring according to my projected stats and see how your scoring changes the rankings. So that'll be cool. And that's pretty much it. I haven't settled on prices. Feedback, I guess, would be nice. I don't think it's going to be much more than a cup of coffee. So if you met me in a bar, we bumped into each other, would you buy me a coffee? Basically, if you've gotten anything out of anything that I've ever produced, that's essentially all I'm asking for. That's all I got. A couple of rants on Melvin, Gordon, Darius Guice. Who else did I talk about? Emmanuel Sanders a little bit. And then, of course, the Falcons running backs. I don't understand how people in the same breath dismiss then the third guy. Just, it doesn't make sense to say, but yeah, this guy, a lot of potential there. Could be great. Oh, but he gets injured a lot. And this other guy isn't that good. But Ollison's not going to do anything. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't follow. Be consistent. Be consistent. Integrate your thoughts and your takes. All right? You can't have 2 top 24 wide receivers coming from an offense with a bad quarterback. So Kirk Cousins, if you're drafting him outside the top 20 wide quarterbacks, and you think Thielen and Diggs are going to be both even wide receiver ones, that doesn't make sense. I'm sorry. It doesn't make sense. We've seen it with one wide receiver one and a bad quarterback like Eli Manning, Odell Beckham, not to name any names. But 2, come on. Doesn't make sense. Make sure your takes are self-consistent. Please. Please. All right. That's all I got for you this week. Getting this recorded and getting it scheduled out for release. Probably, I know this is Saturday, so I might get it out on Sunday just so it's not late and just so it's still relevant. All right, guys. Thanks for joining me. This was interesting. This was fun. First time I did all this combined in one. And I will see you next week.